You know, in all this time, from the days of the original, I'm surprised we never got a companion movie to this. East Side Story. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about a film I'm a little late to discuss, West Side Story. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this movie were, if you already saw it, or if you are planning on seeing it, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But let's not waste any more time, and let's talk about West Side Story. This sees love at first sight strike when young Tony spots Maria at a high school dance in 1957 New York City. This burgeoning romance helps to fuel the fire between the warring Jets and Sharks, two rival gangs vying for control of the streets. This is the second adaptation of the 1957 musical of the same name after the Best Picture winner from 1961, and it's directed by this little-known filmmaker who you may or may not have heard of, named Steven Spielberg. And while at first another adaptation of West Side Story doesn't seem like the most interesting idea in a day and age where the market is saturated with IP films getting most of the wide releases, I know if there's anyone who can not only make this work but let it soar, it's Spielberg. And this wound up being one of my most anticipated movies of 2021. And I was right about this. Now, I really enjoyed the original West Side Story. I even included it in a video that I did early on in my channel where I discussed my favorite musicals. Though I gotta say, as good as that film is, I think Spielberg found a way to improve upon it. And to be clear, I'm not referring to this as a remake, especially given the screenplay for this actually follows the script for the Broadway version much closer than the original did. I know it's easier to refer to this as the West Side Story remake, but this is simply just a second adaptation of the musical. And I will say, 2021 was a very good year for musicals, between In the Heights, Tick Tick Boom, Everybody's Talking About Jamie, and a bunch others. And I really appreciated the mini comeback they've been making. I know they don't exactly have the box office draw they once had, and we'll get more into that in a bit, but I'm glad we're getting a little more of these than we're used to getting in the past decade or so. And this is another solid, well-made addition to said mini comeback. So we'll start with the music itself, as you can't have a good musical without good songs. And even though these are all songs a lot of us have heard before, I will say these were all just exceptionally done. Like, when I saw this, it wasn't exactly a crowded theater, like there were a decent amount of people there, but everyone who was there broke into applause after nearly every song. I'm not really going to do all these comparisons to the original movie, especially as I haven't gotten a chance to rewatch it recently, but I enjoy just about all the songs here. Tonight was always one of my favorites from the original, and that was once again the case here. I Feel Pretty's another classic that was done well here. The Jet song still as catchy as ever, and I found myself moving along to them and nearly everything else. Not all of them necessarily felt like showstoppers, but they're all enjoyable. And the choreography in the dancing was just as great. And I mean that not just in terms of the actual sequence where the characters go to a dance, which is a pivotal moment, but in every song, nearly everyone just blew me away. I thought Justin Peck, who handled choreography for this, did a nice job, especially as he didn't do a beat-by-beat recreation of the choreography from the 1961 version. There are several famous movements that were retained, but he also managed to do his own thing, which was great. But even the score in between the actual musical numbers was just wonderful. Composer David Newman essentially lifted Leonard Bernstein's score from the 1961 version, but it still worked, as it maintained this almost whimsical feel that would make the film constantly feel like it kept moving along at this brisk pace. Even though this is a 2.5-hour movie, you didn't always feel it. And it added to this overall aesthetic that reminded me a lot of not just the 1961 version, but of musicals from that time period in general. This almost felt like it was Spielberg's tribute to the classic era of musicals, especially during the 50s and 60s, where musicals were combined with the epic film. And there'd be these grand presentations of them, and they'd do all these road shows, and it would be treated like this big event. That's the vibe I got here, from the way it was shot, with its cinematography, its use of actual film, and its heavy reliance on grand wide shots, to the rearrangement of Bernstein's original score. It felt like I was being transported to a completely different time, and I was being treated to an event. And as someone who has a lot of fondness for these older musicals, it just put a big smile on my face. And I thought it did a nice job of playing into people's nostalgia for the original and for films of that time period, without it ever feeling like it had no substance otherwise. You see that a lot with these sequels to long-running IPs that try to take the best elements of the original properties and exacerbate them. I didn't quite get that with this. It didn't look to just be a beat-by-beat rehash of the 1961 version. It tried very much to do its own thing, between its changes to the choreography to several alterations made to the characters. And I know there are several elements to the original story that definitely feel dated in terms of dialogue and representation, and while one may argue that those might not necessarily be perfected here, it certainly felt improved upon, so that was good. And then there are the performances. I'm gonna say up front, I have no interest in discussing Ansel Elgort, given what's since come out about him after the movie wrapped production. All I'll say is, even if that wasn't the case, he was the weakest part of the movie anyway, in terms of his performance, and he was just lacking in charisma. But everyone else was absolutely phenomenal. Breakout star is Rachel Zegler as Maria, with this being her first feature film, and she just knocked it out of the park. She was absolutely phenomenal. She clearly has a long, promising career ahead of her, with the way she does such a seamless job of giving off such charm, while also expressing the gravity of a situation. Though Ariana DeBose as Anita was another major standout, having quickly come a long way since being just part of the ensemble in Hamilton. But she's been picking up awards left and right for this movie, and it's not hard to see why, as she was just fantastic, trying to serve as a moral compass for Maria, while also dealing with her own struggles. You also have Rita Moreno, who played Anita in the original, playing Valentina here, who serves as the mentor figure to all the younger characters. And for one thing, it's just nice to still see Rita Moreno still going and being just as energetic as ever, and while her screen time is somewhat limited, she makes every single moment count, emerging with such a strong presence that attempts to serve as a peacemaker between the Sharks and Jets, which doesn't go exactly that smooth. And two other big standouts in the supporting performances are Mike Feist as Riff, the leader of the Jets, along with David Alvarez as Bernardo, the Shark leader, who's also Maria's brother and Anita's boyfriend. And this is the first major movie role for both, with it being Alvarez's feature-length debut altogether, and both just had electrifying screen presences. They were just commanding each time either were on screen, especially capturing the tension nicely between the two groups, and they were both also great during the musical sequences, and I can't wait to see where both will pop up next. And it was just great to see so many emerging names be placed front and center here, and all get their moment to shine. It's just unfortunate to see this seemingly be one of the reasons why this didn't do so well at the box office, since there weren't so many recognizable names. Despite being hailed as one of the best movies of 2021, it was declared as a box office bomb. Though keep in mind, this was also released in the middle of a pandemic, and it was released the week before Spider-Man, which was all anyone could talk about for all of December. And while I don't usually pay close attention to box office numbers, especially given how the last couple of years have been, I do hope this is kept in mind, because even though this is an already established property, this is the sort of film I'm hoping we get more of. It would be nice to get more musicals, and it would be nice to get more of these wide releases that have up-and-coming talent front and center like we see here. I just hope that this doesn't get used as an indicator that that's not what people want, especially given how much attention is placed to box office numbers these days. I think there are way too many external factors playing a part in why this didn't do so well financially. And honestly, I think, despite the fact that Disney hasn't been treating the leftover 20th century films all that well, this is one of the few films where they actually did a pretty good job with marketing. And now that this has just hit Disney Plus, I'm sure it'll get a nice boost from people who didn't necessarily want to go to the theaters to see it. So I hope this doesn't hurt the chances for more musicals or anything in the near future. Now, as for criticisms, my main one besides whatever I briefly mentioned earlier essentially stem from problems I had with the source material to begin with. For one thing, the original musical is based on Romeo and Juliet, and that was never exactly one of my favorite stories to begin with. I always found the idea that these two people literally fall in love at first sight, I always found it kind of corny. It's not even like they see each other and just spend the movie getting to know one another. It was as if they knew they were soulmates from just locking eyes once and having never seen each other beforehand. I always found that jumping off point to be a little too far-fetched for me. And then there are several instances where I think characters are forgiven a bit too quickly for awful things they take part in, particularly during the back half of the film. Like, things that should have sat with everyone a bit more before they eventually forgive another character, if at all. And it always felt like things were glossed over a bit too quickly in some moments. Again, this is something I had an issue with in the original story, so this isn't unique to this film. It's just one of those things that I wish would have been fixed here that ultimately wasn't. West Side Story is a rare sort of film for this day and age. Not only is it a musical, but it's an adaptation of a work that's been previously adapted. It features a mostly up-and-coming cast, and yet it manages to be an improvement over the Best Picture-winning original adaptation. While it does suffer a bit from some of the same issues I had with the original story, it's still a beautifully shot film, acting as a tribute to the style of the classic era of musicals. And it features a number of powerful performances, with the two standouts easily being Rachel Zegler and Ariana DeBose. This is probably Steven Spielberg's best work in years, and if you haven't seen it yet, you should definitely check it out. West Side Story gets an 8.5 out of 10. So let me know, did you see West Side Story, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you like this more than the original, less than the original? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it. And for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone, and keep having fun with film.